We are thinking Christmas and the environment for this. Now, obviously, Father Christmas goes around the world delivering presents using his reindeer. However, apparently reindeer are very windy animals. So does that mean that it's not the greenest way for Father Christmas to travel? Is there a better way for him to go? Well, John Buckley is from Carbon Footprint Limited and he's been crunching the numbers for us. I'm sure you've got nothing else to do, John, at this time of year than sit there and ponder what a reindeer trumps compared to standard exhaust emissions.
Well, it's not just the trumps, it's actually more the belching at the other end that produces the methane. But it's obviously a big concern because it's a methane, which is what we're concerned about here, which is a greenhouse gas, and it has a high global warming potential, much higher than carbon dioxide, actually about 25 times higher per kilogram of gas. Yes. So that's what we're concerned about here, is these poor little reindeers as they're tracking around the world belching.
Well, yes, so there's 9 of them. I did not realise that burping was such a problem for the reindeer. Bless them. So the 9 reindeer, of course, attached to Santa's sleigh, led by Rudolph. They've got to go all around the world. How long will they be travelling for? How far are they going?
So it depends a little bit on which route he takes, but I think it's somewhere between 40 and 100 million miles, which is quite a long way. He's got quite a long time to do it. He's got 31 hours when you take account of the different time zones. So, you might think the night's actually quite short, but take account of the time zones. He's got 31 hours. But he's got a huge amount to do. So he's got to deliver presents to probably about 750 million children. And if you consider how many gifts the kids get nowadays, if you assume 10 presents a child, that's 7.5 billion presents that these poor reindeer have to be pulling around the world on this 40 million mile trip. So yeah, it's a big job, isn't it?
7.5 million tons of presents for 9 reindeer. That's a big task. No, thank heavens Father Christmas has magic on his side to be able to power everything. So let's imagine, though, that in this scenario, they are standard reindeer, not magical reindeer, because we can't for a moment guess at what they'd be producing. What would a standard reindeer produce going between 40 and 100 million miles carrying 7.5 billion presents?
Well, that's a really good question, isn't it? So I think if you imagine a single non-magical reindeer can pull probably about 100 kilograms of weight, then you're going to need about 70 million non-magical reindeers to be able to do this feat. And what we've got to think about here is a single reindeer produces, on average, about 10 grams of methane per day. So for that 70 million non-magical reindeers, you're looking at about 700 tons of methane, which isn't, like I say, it doesn't sound too huge amount, but when you consider methane is 25 times higher global warming potential than carbon dioxide, it gives an equivalent of about 17,500 tons of carbon dioxide.
Wowza. So what would be the best way to travel then? What are the alternatives?
Well, that's another good question, isn't it? So you could go, if you used a standard car, that would, to do 40 million miles, it would probably produce about 11,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Obviously, it would be better to plug that in and have an electric car, which would then be about a third of that, so you're then down to about 4,000 tons of carbon dioxide. And if you could power it from renewables, then that could be 0 tons of carbon dioxide, so that would be great, wouldn't it? The other options would be to use a plane. So if you imagine a single passenger on a plane going 40 million miles would produce about 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Obviously, he's not just a single passenger; he'd need the whole aeroplane. So then you're probably in the several millions of tons of carbon dioxide for the whole plane, unless you can move that plane to a kind of the next generation of zero carbon type aircraft that are being developed at the moment, whether it's hydrogen or electric. And power it from renewables again, which is the future. And I think, maybe in 10 years' time, he may have that opportunity to be able to switch his reindeers to maybe an electric aircraft or a hydrogen-powered plane and be able to do it that way.
I firmly believe that hydrogen is the future. I could bang on about that for hours. Honestly, you don't want to get me started on hydrogen and batteries. I'm the most boring person in the world, John. Some would argue not just at that point, but especially when that happens. Listen, John, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for doing that number crunching. So in 10 years' time, it could well be a hydrogen-powered sleigh.